and welcome back to the channel. In today's episode, we are actually going to be talking about the health benefits and some of the possible risks of caffeine consumption. So since I do work at Starbucks, I've kind of started to research a little bit more about the caffeine, what it does to you, and also I do have some prior knowledge because I did study health, nutrition, and just sports in general for 4 years in college, and then I worked at a sports supplement place for like a year and a half. So nutrition and kind of what the body does in certain conditions is kind of my thing. So caffeine, first of all, is basically the most socially acceptable drug ever known to man, because it technically is. It is slightly addictive. Like, some people say that it's very addictive, in other cases it's not very addictive. It's one of those things that kind of varies from person to person and does tend to be kind of addictive, but you can pretty much quit any time with just, at most, sometimes mild headaches being something. Some other disadvantages are also restlessness or being unable to sleep. However, it's caffeine that's kind of like taking a laxative and saying it's gonna make you poop. So it's kind of one of those things that you're doing it for that reason. Other risks are sometimes hypertension or having high blood pressure. Also, there are some risks, just kind of case to case, with younger or extremely younger or extremely older people or pregnant people, because, well, in those age ranges, or in the case of pregnant people, what's going on in their bodies is very different than the average, like from teenager to like middle age to prime age. So from early on to later on stages in life, those are kind of like you gotta be careful with it. Yeah, it's kind of like with everything though. And then as far as health advantages go, there's actually quite a few, and like you can Google like health advantages and disadvantages to caffeine, and you're gonna get like mixed results everywhere. But basically, from what I've researched and whatnot, some of the key health advantages that I'm going to talk on are basically going to be the ones that have to do with sports, exercising, and fitness. So some of those are the increased use of fatty acids in the bloodstream, not necessarily fat loss necessarily. That's kind of case to case, and how much you're doing cardio, what you're using caffeine for. Like, you can use caffeine in both aerobic and anaerobic exercises and have pretty good results in both circumstances, because the way it works in endurance athletes is that it does help to give you that extra energy because it stimulates the nervous system. It also does kind of reduce fatigue, and also like you have that, oh, I'm on caffeine kind of placebo effect as well, where you're like, oh, I have all this caffeine in me, I'm not tired, blah blah blah. So there's that as well, and then the actual in your body, your nervous system is kind of getting a boost. Fatty acids are being used more than like glycogen stores. Proteins aren't being used as much in extreme aerobic exercises such as like cross-country running, marathon running, etc. And then also in anaerobic exercises, you're also going to have that same kind of reduced fatigue effect, and of course your nervous system will be on, that little caffeine boost, but it also helps the different muscle fibers and like the muscle bundles and the recruitment of muscles to actually work more efficiently during the time that the caffeine is actually in your system. So all that to say is that caffeine rather, is actually pretty good for you as far as like fitness goes. Like, it can be used as like an alternative to pre-workouts. In fact, most pre-workouts will have caffeine in them as an active ingredient. And then we actually have to go in and look at what kind of caffeine you're using. So there's caffeine tablets, which are obviously not what I would say to use. I'm against kind of tablets and all sorts of like non-traditional, like, the only like actual supplement I use is protein powder, and even that I don't use so much. Like, I only use it when I don't have other forms of protein, and I've really cut down on even my protein powder usage. I try and get my proteins from like the foods I eat and the things I drink. Even as a vegetarian, it's still pretty easy to do that, as long as you do your research, etc., and you're not going too crazy in any direction. And then beyond caffeine tablets, there's of course coffee, tea, and soda. So soda you can drink, like Mountain Dew. Like one of my professors in college used to always drink Mountain Dew. That was his thing. That's how he woke up. He didn't drink coffee. He drank Mountain Dew. Then there's teas. Black tea, white tea, and green tea all have caffeine in them, whereas herbal teas do not have caffeine. Or sometimes they put other things in them to have that caffeine result. I can't think of one at the moment, but mainly if you're going to want to try and wake up with tea, black tea or white tea or green tea are all good sources of caffeine. Personally, my favorite there is green tea. I love a good cup of hot green tea is my favorite. As far as like iced teas, I'm actually more of an herbal tea person. I like the passion tea. Personally, like even before I worked at Starbucks, I actually had passion tea at home that I would drink. Black tea is also very good. Most sweet teas are black tea. And as far as actual caffeine from coffee, you have to know about your different roasts. There's obviously decaf, which has no caffeine, and then there's regular roast, which is most things, or that mild or regular roast, and then there's dark roast, which has less caffeine but stronger flavor, and blonde roast, which has more caffeine and less flavor. So me personally, I'm a middle ground to dark roast person. I'm not a fan of blonde roast, but if you like that caffeine, go for that. Then there's always, of course, espresso shots, which are highly concentrated caffeine, and those you can get a little overboard with. Me personally, I try not to have more than 4 at a time, and even 4 is kind of pushing it. And that does bring me to actually like caffeine overdose. So it is actually possible to overdose on caffeine. Typically you see that more in the caffeine tablets. Those you can overdose on much easier than overdosing with things that you drink, because your body can only handle so much liquid at a time. So I think like the actual like dosages are like 25 caffeine tablets and 42 cups of coffee. So that's like your overdose range. So if you're taking 25 caffeine tablets or 42 cups of coffee, that's obviously very difficult to do, and that's like where you should stay away from. But honestly, most people can go like 1 to 6 cups of coffee in a day is okay. 6 is kind of on the high range, but I definitely know some people that do way more than 6, but not so much where they're at like 42 and then like worried about their health. And then like me personally, I'll drink like 3 cups of coffee, maybe 4. Or like I'll order like a Trenta size, which is like a huge cup at Starbucks, and just like a Trenta cold brew, which is like an even stronger form of caffeine because it's like slowly like brewed in like ice water for like a period of 20 hours. So you really get that strong taste and caffeine. So I get a cold brew and I get like a couple shots of espresso in there, and I'll sip that over the course of like a couple days, or well, a couple nights of editing rather. So yeah, that's caffeine, the health benefits and health risks, I suppose. And then yeah, so that's it for today's episode. And then I'm not sure exactly how these are all going to be spaced as far as like timing, but there will also be a couple episodes around about a Starbucks workout, Starbucks favorite drinks, and other like healthy Starbucks like alternatives. So those will all be coming out pretty soon probably, or maybe even like before this. So that is the episode. If you did like it, go ahead, smash that thumbs up button. If you're enjoying the series, please subscribe. And as always, God bless, and see you for another episode.